I'm Eric Hayden.
I'm Nick Mason.
And this is Neon Static. Welcome to episode 10 of Neon Static.
Yes.
How you doing, Nick?
I am good. We've made it to double digits.
Yeah, I know. This is incredible. It's like a birthday.
Yeah.
We are without Johnny tonight. He was not able to make it, but we will catch him next time. And we're here to chat about a few things. We've got
lot of things.
East Coast Nationals to discuss on the docket. We've got new cards that came out since our spoiler episode, which was episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of news. Let's jump right into 24/7 news cycle.
This is 24/7 news cycle. We're going to talk all about the many, many things that are happening in Netrunner. It has been a busy couple of weeks, Eric.
Yeah, it feels like a very fun time to be a part of the game and a part of the community because a lot is going on.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is wild. Obviously, Automata Initiative has released, which is super exciting. There's a ton of fun new stuff in there. I just keep looking at it and being like, oh, this is a cool new thing you can do. And yeah. Mostly on the Corp side, which I feel like is good for me because I hadn't felt like Corp deck really spoke to me in terms of like fun mechanics before. And now there's so much wildness you can do.
Yeah, I tend to look at Corp cards and have cool, fun ideas about decks to build easier when I'm looking at Corp for some reason.
Yeah.
The runner seems more mushy in my head on like what to do with cards, but that's probably because the constraints that you're under with Corp are more apparent to me. But 65 new cards in this new set. There's a ton in here. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it really can throw just everything on its head. Not to mention a huge rotation of cards.
Yes.
Data and Destiny, as well as the entire Flashpoint cycle, just got rotated 120 cards in Flashpoint, and Data and Destiny was 55. So for the quick math people, that's 175 cards that are now gone and you don't need to worry about and have drastically changed the way that the meta is operating.
Right. And a new banned list.
That's right. Oh, man. Yeah, we didn't even write that down.
Right? Yeah.
Do you want to mention the cards that got banned?
Yeah. So
did anything get unbanned? No, right?
No. The new banned cards are Automata Protocol, surprising literally no one. Tithonium, which surprised me because I did not know it existed as a card. And Bugalter, that disappointed me because I like Bugalter.
Yeah, everybody says it's too good. That's fine. I just never played with it. And I was sort of excited for Criminal to
have stuff.
Yeah, to have a moment, like Anarch has stolen everyone's moment for like a decade. So I kind of was, not that I've been active watching it, but every time I've been a part of the game, there's been like one really good Shaper deck that wins half of the worlds somehow. And then like everyone else generally tends to be on Anarch because they just have fantastic value cards and it's hard to go wrong. But now things are a little different. Now with this rotation to Bin Breakers, which consist of MK Ultra, Paperclip, and Black Orchestra. And for standard players, those are gone now. Those are rotated out as part of the Flashpoint cycle. So a lot of the Anarch power seems to have dissipated, at least on the face of it, where you no longer can just trash cards at will and never have to install programs. So, I still think that Anarch is probably on top, especially after the results from APAC. That's the first big tournament in the new meta.
So yeah, Automata being gone is very, very good. I hated that card.
Yeah, it's for the better.
Yeah. Tithonium, I think I did actually play Tithonium once or twice before it rotated, although I don't remember in what.
It was in that sports
or something. Oh, yes.
Choo-choo train deck.
Yep.
Get on the Arella train.
No, and then Bugalter, there's so many sentries you can't run while Bugalter's around because you will give the runner money.
Yeah.
So turns out that's a bad thing to do.
Credit positive breaking's it's interesting.
Yeah.
It seems, it's a return to form for like the classic definition of what sentries seem to mean in the game, as far as they're the scary ones. If you have your killer down, most of the scary stuff is gone. DNA tracker isn't around to kill you. You have a teeny now as a sort of replacement, which we talked about in our last podcast episode.
Right.
But largely, if you have a killer down, then you probably are relatively safe running. And that's sort of, I don't know, I kind of find that like a nice return to form. Like you're probably not going to get through a whole lot if there's a barrier that gets in your way, but it's kind of neat.
Right. But you can face check without having to really worry that you're going to just instantly die.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely still stuff out there that will be a problem. I believe there are still barriers that can trash your programs, et cetera. But
oh yeah, there's always Archer.
Well, that's a sentry though.
Is it? Why did I think that was a barrier?
No, it's like the iconic sentry.
No, you're right. You're definitely right. What? Anyway,
that's okay.
All right. Let's ignore me.
We all have tough days. Yeah. So ban list. That's that. A couple other small pieces of news before we get on the big fun stuff. One, that the 2023 H2 Circuit Opener prize pack, if you are a tournament organizer, just got announced that the shipping is delayed on that. We're waiting on one of these for our standard CO that we want to hold, I guess probably in October now at this point. But they said that they should be shipped and arriving mid-September, I believe, is what I read. So
yeah. The Netrunner podcast space has expanded
significantly.
There are two new Netrunner podcasts since we last recorded. There is Queering the Message, aka QTM, with Izzy, Ellie, and Mond, and June and Riel. That's a big cast.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a lot of fun and a really great perspective to have out there, and to, for a couple of cis white dudes like us to listen to, and I really appreciate it, and a lot of good experience. Izzy, I think, came in 10th at East Coast Nationals.
Yeah,
and is a very strong player. I am less familiar with the other people as hosts on there, but Izzy's a powerhouse.
Yeah,
and the Null Signal Station is the official NSG podcast, and that also started since our last recording, which is very exciting. They came out with their first episode in Spoilers Week and did some spoiler stuff, did some rules stuff. I think they're trying to have a podcast like once a week or once every other week.
Wow.
Which is ambitious. As a podcast producer, good luck. I wish them well. It's hard to do. Hopefully they're short and they have a big team to help.
Yeah.
But Ed, Ginevra, and Sanjay are the main hosts of that, as far as I'm aware. We met Sanjay at East Coast Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the tournament organizers and just nice as can be. Had very kind things to say to us, and that was really neat.
Yeah.
And I just love having more people to listen to talk about Netrunner. It makes my workday go by a lot faster in my commutes, which is at this point admittedly short.
I was going to say, yeah, you're 10 minutes door to door or whatever.
It's
barely time to fire it up.
Yeah. But I always end up listening to these things the day they drop. So
yeah,
I appreciate it. And I hope that more people join and that these people keep producing at the rate they have been, which is like once a week at this point. So
you hear that? Eric's got his reminder set now. He needs this.
Yeah. This is something I need. And we also had two huge tournaments since the last time we recorded. We mentioned a few times East Coast Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
We went to that.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about our experience?
It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I came 43rd. Went
was that?
43rd.
Out of
59?
59.
Was it?
Out of 59.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's 72%.
Thanks for the quick math. I went 2 and 3 on Corp, which was just enough to succeed at one of the wishes that I set when we went in, there were these achievements based on, one of them was setting yourself a goal and then achieving it. And you got more prize tickets that way. And mine was to kill someone on Corp with a boom.
And you were on
Asmari. Yep. And then also to win through scoring out as Asmari. So I just really enjoyed that deck gave you two different win conditions relatively reliably. And it was all about like knowing when to drop the one and go after the other,
Yep. And you saw hard-hitting news out the door.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Hard-hitting news one last time. And then I went 1-3 on Runner, which was honestly a super fun deck to play. A kit inversificator deck. So you would paint one ice as code gate, and then you'd kind of ride it into the server with multiple copies of inversificator. You could also do some cheeky stuff. I did a lot of swapping of ice around, particularly when it started to get advanced. I'd put it somewhere I didn't care so much about getting into again. All that fun stuff. It just was a super fun one to play and also difficult. So I went 1-3 with the Runner.
The kit deck was the Undefeated at London.
Yes.
PP kit and the Inversificator by Willie BN1.
Yep. Yeah, I added an Ngolo to that because I misread some of the notes on the original deck list.
I see.
It said something along the lines of, I only run with the one breaker, the one Inversificator, unless I need to install another copy or Ngolo. And I read that as another copy of Ngolo.
Or
and
the Ngolo.
Yeah. Assumed it was a mistake that there was only one copy of Ngolo in there and threw in a second one. So I'll just fix that little typo for you there.
Yeah.
It was not a typo. That card sat in my hand all day. It was good times.
That's pretty funny. For listeners who don't know about Inversificator, which is still legal, it's a 6-cost 1MU decoder program.
Mm-hmm.
The first time each turn you pass a piece of ice after an encounter during which this program fully broke that ice, you may swap it with another installed piece of ice. And then it's 1 to boost 1 strength and 1 credit to break 1 code gate subroutine, which is pretty wild because it lets you approach any piece of ice, paint it as a code gate with kit, right, if it's the outermost.
Yep.
Break it with Inversificator, and then swap it with the next piece of ice you're about to approach, and then break it again with Ngolo or Inversificator again.
Right.
And then if you have a second Inversificator out, you can break the second one instead with that second Inversificator and then ride it in again. Or you can swap it out of the way. Yeah, it's a pretty cool deck.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a ton of fun to play. And also, you had the fun of it plays Spark of Inspiration, one of my favorite cards. But yeah, you just play Spark, and then an Inversificator shows up because you're only running that and an Ngolo.
Right. And then, sometimes you get the Ngolo and you kind of, I don't know, maybe you're not even sad about that. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you deal. It's definitely not as efficient or as disruptive as swapping around ice. And also, you save on having to paint the second ice with Inversificator.
Yeah. And both of these things are very expensive, 6 and 5 cost programs. Yep. But Spark, you pay 3 and you get to install a program paying 10 less. So both of them become 3 cost to install, which is pretty good.
And Spark draws it from your deck.
Right.
Automatically. So
yeah, you hate to see the programs in your hand.
Terrible.
Before the sparks. Oh, and also 3 prepaid and Anagam and things like that. So yeah, so for my part, I went 4 and 6 for the day. I came in 41st. I thought I came in 50th for several days, and then I looked again just like 10 minutes ago at the standings. And it turns out like the last round never got closed out or something. So I jumped up. I think my last round might have been a win or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, I came in 41st apparently. I went 3 and 2 with my Corp deck, which was the Bost Ob Fast Advance Ob deck, which was very strong.
Yeah.
And the 2 games I lost were, one was against Jeff Usengarin, who really had that game pretty strongly, but it was like if luck had gone in my favor on the last run. Jeff was on Asa, and like a self-milling, obviously, Asa doing lots of core damage and things like that. Asa got down to 0 cards in deck.
Wow.
Like no more stack. And that deck running out of cards to have in hand is bad because the events are what's scary.
Right.
And then the other game was, I feel like, less close. And then my runner, I went 1 and 4, and I was on the boring control Latino APOC here deck.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun to play as well. I did do some APOCing, but I lost most games. I went 1 and 4. So, yeah, I don't know. For 10 rounds of single-sided Swiss was a lot for both of us. We drove down with Derek as well, and he did better than both of us, I think. He came in like 38th, I think. 37th.
He did, yeah. But in our defense, we got up earlier. So
okay, sure. Yeah, and we won more games. Derek only won 3 games, and we both won 4. So
yeah. What's this taking a tie? Although
yeah,
I did have
one of yours was a bye too.
Well, you said I would have won that bye if I had gotten paired up against a real person.
It's true.
I did have one of my losses was very nearly a tie. My opponent was sitting in a spot where he couldn't see the clock and didn't realize that we were into like the last minute or two. He ran HQ, or no, sorry, he ran R&D, saw a Bologna sitting on top of it and decided not to steal it because he wanted to trigger Maw. I had one agenda, 15 minutes in my hand.
Oh, so no steal. So Maw then says, since you access a card and didn't steal it, the corp has to trash a random card from HQ.
Yep. So out of my 5-card hand, I trashed the 15 minutes, which is a 2-1 agenda that I could have scored from hand. He ended up going back, stealing the Bologna, which put him 1 point ahead. And then time got called during his final run or turn. I forget exactly, but he said, oh yeah, if I'd known that we were almost to time, I would have just stolen it.
Yeah.
Without the Maw trigger. And after the game, I told him, well, it was right to do the Maw trigger because otherwise I would have had this 2-1 that I could score to tie the game. So,
right.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you couldn't because it wasn't in hand anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, no, it was a lucky hit, but it worked out.
Yeah. And the tournament was won by a relatively new player, Wikinometry, or Fa. And Fa had the pleasure of being sat across the table from Fa round 1. And so Fa was on the outfit, killed version of the outfit, non-vegan, and Hoshiko. And I was running against the outfit and went 3 turns. Like my opening hand was like all 3 sure gambles and 2 of some other card. I had like a full house. And I knew I needed some money and got some. I played at least 1 or both of those sure gambles. I think I was like sure gamble, like run R&D, steal a Project Atlas off the top, and then like do another sure gamble. And I was cool. All right, this is great. I'm good. And then the next turn, more money, run R&D, rip another Atlas off of the top of R&D, and I'm like,
holy cow.
Oh my god,
holy cow, it's happening.
And I don't know Fa at all. And then like turn 3, I think, okay, I need some money. I get a little money. I do another, I think maybe it was the second sure gamble. And then I think it's turn 3, Fa goes, okay, economic warfare, hard-hitting news. So I'm down to 2 credits, and I have a sure gamble in hand, and HQ is also wide open, and Fa's got 3 cards in hand. And I'm like, okay, well, I could either run HQ here and try and find a boom and trash it if it's in there, because boom is an operation that has a trash cost, and if you have 2 tags, it'll do 7 meat damage and kill you. It's just rotated out for newer players. It's a threat you don't need to worry about anymore, but that it was either that line or just assumed like she doesn't have this. Like the odds of being killed here are just astronomically low because it's turn 3.
She's drawing next to no cards.
Right. And
how
this
could she have a
4-card combo? Right.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go 3 clicks for credits and the sure gamble. So next turn I can clear all 4 tags.
Yep.
And then, mandatory draw, boom. and the game is over. I was the first person to lose a game in the tournament. It was wild.
Ouch.
Yeah, but that was fun, and she was very gracious. And yeah, from there, that was kind of set the tone for the day. I figured at some point, right, we would like lose a few games and then meet that skill level where we start to submarine back up because,
right, or
I
at
don't
least
have
level out.
right. I don't have too huge of an ego with this game, but I don't really have an ego with this game. But I feel like, I've played 300 to 400 games of Netrunner, and a lot of them in the last like 6 months. I should be able to do this. And at no point did I ever like sit down across from someone during the day and go, like this person is new. I'm going to win this, and I have to like do it gracefully. Like,
right.
No.
Yeah, no, it turns out that like when you drive several states to a nationals tournament,
Yeah.
good players show up like at all levels. Like the
bottom
there,
tables were full of sharks. I think the main difference was that the people like that were kind of hanging out at the bottom tables were happier playing some homebrew thing that they came up with, but they're still fantastic players. And those decks weren't like bad. They were just less complete meta gas the whole time.
Right.
I played against a person who was on a null tag me deck, which was a lot of fun, counter surveillance. And my game against Mulligan Dragon, who was running this deck, came down to it. Like very luckily had a border control on that I intentionally put on R&D because I was like, okay, these counter surveillances will kill me if I can't stop them.
Right.
But counter surveillance, pay like 12 credits and then run into a border control is kind of a bad time. And then the counter surveillance is over. But then the second time that happened was the Formicary ob trick where you go res a Mavirus, trash it, and then use ob to go fetch a Managarm Skunkworks, put it on R&D, and then use Formicaries to make them reapproach this thing. This should probably be in the rules segment, but you approach the server. Managarm Skunkworks says whenever the runner approaches the server, end the run unless they either spend click or pay 5 credits. So they, ask them, do you want to do that? They say, okay, I'll pay 5 credits. And then you res a Formicary, which is a piece of ice that can be resed from anywhere on the board, and says whenever the runner approaches a server, you may res this ice. If you do, move this ice to the innermost position, protecting the approach server. So now they're encountering that Formicary, and then they go past it. Once they deal with it, it either ends the run or they do 2 net or they break it. And then now they're approaching the server again. So you have to deal with the Managarm again. And then you can res a second or a third Formicary and make them encounter the Managarm up to 4 times. And that's what saved me.
Wow.
On the second time of that. But
that's so brutal.
Yeah. it was
over.
Yeah. Kind of soul crushing. But that's my point. Like this person thought of this deck, built this cool thing, and died to this particular combo, but it wasn't like a sure thing. At no point were any of my wins like a guaranteed.
I when we get to a little bit later on, I have a deck that I saw that's using a very similar version of that combo, but it can do it infinitely.
Oh God.
Anyway.
Which combo? The Formicary thing?
Formicary Managarm, yeah.
Ooh. All right, let's take note. I want to hear about this.
Yes. It's cool. Anyway, to things that we are talking about. The story of the day, I think, on the runner side was Big Hoshiko, right? Which has been kind of the story of the day for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was 6 out of the 8 of the top cut were Hoshiko decks on the runner side.
I think it was 7 Hoshiko and an Atom.
Was it?
Yeah.
Atom?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Atom came in 6th.
Wow. Good for you, Adam.
I would highly, highly recommend going back and watching Code Marvel's stream of the top cut, which is on both his Switch page, which doesn't go away because he's an affiliate, I think. And then also got ported over to YouTube. The game that Shu played piloting Adam is masterful and like poetry. It's a great send-off for Adam. I think he named the deck Adam's Last Run, and the game was fantastic. It comes down to some like a great final turn. I won't spoil it. Just go watch it.
Cool.
I didn't finish getting all the way through those games yet, but I have gone back and watched the first like 3 or 4 of the cut. And I watched Nick was on stream. Nick, you were on stream.
God. Yeah. That was, the second day I was slightly fried and I was playing just a pile of cards that said bypass out of Mercury with Hermes, of course, because why wouldn't you?
Of course.
It was a little ugly. Me and my opponent got started a little bit late because they were still cutting proxies and everything. So they just approached us and said, hey, we were actually in the middle of a game. They came up and said, hey, do you guys want to move over to the stream table and play? And I was like, sure. And I had what I thought was a pretty commanding position at the time. And we said, we'll just shuffle up and go again, whole new game. And that second one didn't go quite so well.
Yeah, that's funny.
I did at one point, my opponent used balanced coverage to reveal an agenda to me.
Yes.
And then put it in hand. And then the next turn, I played Chrysopian Skimming. So he revealed the same agenda to me. And then, knowing that there was an agenda in HQ, I ran R&D. It was, yeah. There was a lot of stuff. Look, okay.
It was next level chess.
Look, when you play Chrysopian Skimming that way, okay, you know what it says? Clicklessly lose 1 money and draw a card, which is also what Hoshko says. And Hoshko was 7 of the top runners at that event.
I see where you're headed with it. Yeah,
exactly.
I think I'm going to start paying credits to draw cards every time.
No, I'm just, look, okay, it's clickless though. It gives you the click back. That's the
true.
key.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
So Nationals was a blast. I think I'm hoping to go back next year. If it's in the same spot, I will be happy to do that. And if it's closer, that would be amazing. And shout outs to the tournament organizers, Dan B, Sanjay, and Pouch Server did a great job running all of the, both days, and everything went very smoothly and everybody was very cool. Got to put some faces to handles and meet some really cool people. So it was a pleasure if I did meet you there, and hope to make it back next time. My hope for next time is that we have more hangout time, because between getting up at 4:30 and the drive and everything, like by the time we got to the end of 10 rounds of Swiss, I was absolutely burnt out and just fell asleep immediately. Yep.
And then we hung out with some folks, the Dans at breakfast the next day.
Code Marvelous. We got to have breakfast with them. And then we got to tell Code Marvelous to come back to our apartment where we would be building decks. And he could hang out before the store opened at our place, which was really close. And then 20 or 30 minutes went by, or more like 40 minutes went by. And then I looked at my phone and noticed that about a half hour previous, Code Marvelous had been at the door asking for us to come down. And then I never saw it, and I feel terrible. So I'm sorry, Dan.
Yeah. And you should.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I feel bad.
No, that was, there was a lot going on that morning. Okay. A lot of frantic deck building. And
then APAC was the other huge tournament that happened. That is the Asia Pacific Continental Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened this past weekend. It started at like midnight here, local time on Friday night, I think, or Saturday night.
Yeah.
And a couple of folks from the area, from like Boston, participated, and power to them. But I was like, oh my God, this is starting now.
Right. Yeah. No way that was happening.
Not for me. That's for sure. It was won by Santa, Charlie McBee, who is a person I don't know, but they were on the outfit, and Hoshiko. Surprise.
Yeah. Two big decks, one in the old meta and one in the new, and it's the same IDs.
Yeah,
but they were very different decks. So the outfit deck in particular was not a kill deck. It was like a big deal, fast advance kind of thing.
Yep.
So
the vegan outfit. Yeah.
Yep.
Did you get a look at the actual decks?
Yeah, it is big-ish Hoshko. Lots of events, 14 programs, which is a lot. Yeah, when you are looking to trash as many things as Hoshko generally does in various ways, it makes sense to have some redundancy. So like 2 Carmens, 2 Cleavers.
Was it the Maw console?
No. Hardware. No, hardware was Keiko, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's the other flavor.
Yep. Boomerang, some gachapons, just new Bahia bands.
Interesting.
Which I understand people are enjoying. So
how many of those?
3.
Whoa, that sort of flies in the face of a lot of the initial takes I've heard on that card.
I think it is being teched in as a tag removal.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Because I think people were expecting a lot of kind of tag stormy NBN decks. So.
Okay. And then, so you've done most of the look poking around at this. You said there's a lot of other new stuff that you saw in there.
Yes. So there's an NBN tag storm deck.
R plus.
Yes. Yep. Reality plus. And it's still running 3 Oppo research, the new HHN, 2 market forces. But like the interesting thing about this one is it has no hedge funds.
Huh.
So a huge amount of the econ is coming from R plus. And also it has 3 Your Digital Life, which is a card that when I first read it, I said, oh, this is terrible. But it's relying on playing Your Digital Life after a Rashida or a Spin Doctor, and also after drawing through the ID. So there's like a bunch of different things you can do, I guess, to get your hand to start the turn really huge so that your Digital Life ends up being like a 2 for 5 or something, or +5 kind of thing.
This is like a fast advance. It's got 3 seamless launch, 2 econ warfares. Interesting. And then apparently Starlit Knight pulling a lot of weight as far as ice in that deck because it so many tags. It's a sentry that gains end the run subroutines for each tag the runner has at a certain threat. I think it's threat 4.
And it also has to tag the runner subs.
Yes, give the runner a tag. Yeah, twice. Yeah, anything else interesting in the list that you saw poking around?
There was one. I don't know if this one actually made it to. So there were a couple of ASA decks that made it. That was actually the big story out of Nationals, was the ASA MAD deck, Mutually Assured Destruction.
ASA Group.
Yes, ASA Group. That I think kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. The one that I saw, I don't know if it made top cut, but this is the combo that I was talking about. So there's a lot of decks out here playing Lady Liberty, which is not a card that I had really looked at. So it's a 5 cost, 1 per deck asset. When your turn begins, place 1 power counter on Lady Liberty, and then for 3 clicks, you can add an agenda from your HQ to your score area worth agenda points equal to the exact number of hosted power counters. So the way people are using this is they will, at the end of the runner turn, res the Lady Liberty in like asset spam decks so you can't check all of the servers anyway.
Yeah.
And then they will use it to score a AI reinforced security or something like that.
Yeah, AR enhanced security.
There you go. It's a 3-1 out of NBN that causes the runner to take a tag the first time they trash an asset. So that's one. And then the other one that I saw Lady Liberty getting used for was the new Stegodon Mark IV.
Really?
Which is yes. So, okay. So it's a 3-1 out of HB. Each run, as long as a piece of ice has been de-resed during that run, each installed icebreaker gets -2 strength. And then whenever a run begins, you may de-res 1 piece of ice not protecting the attacked server to gain 1 credit. Use this ability only once per turn. So the combo that I saw was using Formicary. You just keep turning it back face down with stegodons.
Whenever the run begins. Yeah, so you can derez them once a turn.
Well, but stegodon stacks. So if you score multiple stegodons, you can turn multiple formicaries face down and then move them over and then re-trigger your Managarm that you've got on whatever server they're like it kind of. Yeah.
Can you res a formicary from like position 2 and then jump it down to the innermost position within the server? I feel like you can from within the same server.
When a runner approaches a server, you may res formicary. Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Now, the big thing about Stegodon is you need them to run something else so you can derez your formicary. But you can also be like swapping it around. You could throw in some thimble rigs and stuff to move your formicaries off of the server you want to protect so you can re-trigger. Like, there's a ton of cool stuff you can do with all of this. Like, you're derezing, you're gaining money, the icebreakers are going negative, which is a thing that can happen. Right? Like it locks them out, and if they manage to get through somehow, then you're just bouncing them off the same Managarm 8 times in a row.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's gross.
Yes, it is.
So you really want to find that Lady Liberty, and then it's like it's gonna get trashed.
Well, but you're also HB though, so you have a bunch of other options for scoring the Stegodon. I mean, you can biotic it, right?
Who was running this? Was it someone in the top cut?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't think it made it to the top cut.
I was gonna say I don't see it in here. Pouch Surfer was in the top cut, I believe, like third place. That's pretty cool. We met Pouch Surfer at East Coast Nationals.
And now it's time for us to talk about the decks that we are brewing in the Jank Bank.
All right, the Jank Bank. This is where we talk about all of the jankiest of the decks.
Yes.
And this time we get to feature one of my very own, which is a truly terrible deck, but it gave me so much joy coming up with the combination that I feel like I have to share it.
I need you to explain this deck to me because I'm looking at all the cards and I'm not understanding.
Okay. It features some new, is it just Airblade? I think it's just Airblade. Yes. That's the only new card in this deck.
Wow.
So it's a Padma deck. I've named it Padma's New Hobby, and I will publish it against my best judgment just so that people can see it.
It's just not publish, it's a record. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll have a link in the show notes to that deck. It's called Padma's New Hobby because Padma is now really into rollerblading.
Yeah.
Because her boat sank, so she had to find a new mode of transportation. So the deck runs 3 copies of Airblade X JSRF edition, which is a new card. It's a 1-cost hardware vehicle subtype hardware. And when you install this hardware, you load 3 power counters onto it. When it is empty, trash it, and then you can use those counters to interrupt, either to prevent 1 net damage, use this ability only during a run, or to prevent a when encountered ability on a piece of ice. So the idea is we get an Airblade, we install it. We're also running 3 copies of Bonhar, which lets you, when your turn begins, you can choose a server. During the first encounter, each turn with a piece of ice protecting that server, whenever the corp would resolve a subroutine, instead they would do 1 net damage. Resolve 1 net damage. And so there's Bonhar, there's Airblades. You can see how this works a little bit. And Padma's ability lets her charge a card, so charge the Airblades, since they have power counters.
Keeps you alive. All right.
Yeah, you run into that server, you take the net damage, but you prevent the net damage, and you're through without any cost, really. It's also running 1 copy of Persephone, which is a program out of the Red Sand cycle. It's a 2 MU program killer, 5 to install.
Wow, 2 MU. So it's really good, right?
Yeah. 1 strength. And it's got, this is the card that a lot of people might not know, right? So it got interface, 2 credits, break 1 sentry subroutine. So that's pretty bad, right?
Yeah, not great.
1 credit to add 1 strength. Whenever you pass a sentry after encountering it, you may trash the top card of your stack. If you do, trash 1 card from the top of R&D for each subroutine on that sentry that resolved during that encounter. So you don't need to use this thing. You just need to encounter a piece of ice, hope that it's a sentry, use Bonhar to resolve the subroutines of 1 net damage, and then pass it, and then trash the top card of your stack, and then mill the corp, 3 or 4 cards, depending on, 1 to 4 cards, hopefully more.
But Eric, wouldn't it be a lot more reliable if you could somehow guarantee that you were going up against a sentry?
Yeah, so there's 3 copies of Egret in the deck, which is a Trojan program, 2 credits, 1 MU, install only on a res piece of ice. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I knew that. Install only you can't blind put an Egret down.
Ah, good to know.
Host ice gains barrier, code gate, and sentry. So you're guaranteed to be running against, after the first run. So you do 1 run with Bonhar, and then you slap the Egret down, and then you can run back on it and mill the corp is the idea. Mm-hmm. In practice, this is a terrible deck. Oh, it also has three Daredevils.
Yeah. What was that?
So Daredevil is a 2 MU console, 5 credits to install. The first time you initiate a run on a server protected by 2 or more pieces of ice each turn, draw 2 cards. So it lets you draw cards for the net damage that you're not actually taking.
So you can throw them away to Bonhar, or...
Yeah, that's the idea if you can't find your Airblades, but you can always find your Airblades because you have 3 of them. It's very silly. It's not good, and that's only when you have 2 ice, and you can break, like Persephone is the only breaker in this deck. It's the only one. So you have to find an Egret to put on the second piece of ice that you're encountering, and apparently you can't just pre-slap that down. So, oh yeah, it's real bad. It's a bad deck, but I had a lot of fun thinking the idea up, and I put rejigs in the deck to recharge the Airblades if you can't run R&D to recharge them. There's a flux capacitor to help recharge the Airblades.
Yeah, because they're going to get drained a lot faster than poor old Padma can keep up with recharging them. So
yeah, it wasn't any good. It turns out it was really fun once to see the thing go off. I forget what is the magic archetype that I'm falling into by making this deck. Is it like a Timmy or a Tommy?
Yeah, I believe. I can never remember what the 3 are. I know it's Timmy, Johnny, and Spike, but I can't remember which one is which.
Spike is the competitive one. I feel like
I don't think. But I don't know that Spike was. Maybe Spike was the wants to do really cool big things.
Yeah, I don't know. I forget the archetypes of Magic players, but
yeah. Anyway,
that's the Jank Bank.
So that's wild. That deck is, yeah, it's an idea.
Yes. It came to fruition. I got it to do the thing, and then it turns out the thing was actually really quite bad. I might as well have just played Shatuska.
Right. Yeah.
Once.
There's an event that does that. It just
or finality,
Yeah, but you could have done that, but then how would you have taken all that damage to the face? That makes it better.
It doesn't. I think maybe if you're running Bonhar, throwing an Airblade in is great. It saves your life a couple times. I think that's good.
Right.
And
for those times when you hit the Endless Eula or something.
Right. And blinking the on encounter effect can be very big too.
Yes.
So I'm curious to kind of poke around with Padma a little bit more and chargeable things, because we got some new chargeable toys. But yeah, that's the Jank Bank. Shall we move it along to spec work?
Let's do it.
Okay, spec work is where we talk about cool rules interactions, and we've already done that a little bit this episode, but we have a couple things that we wanted to highlight. Nick, why don't you tell us a little about Atea?
Yeah, so Atea is a card that the moment I looked at it, I realized that it said each turn. So just to reread it, I think we went over it last time, but it's a 4515 Jinteki ID limit to remote servers. The first time each turn you install a card in the root of or protecting a remote server, you may install one card from HQ in the root of or protecting another remote server, ignoring all costs. You cannot score the second card this turn. So I just wanted to be able to trigger that as many times as possible on my opponent's turn. So I started looking at Daruma, which is a little used upgrade. It's supposed to be a trap setup kind of thing, but it is a one-cost upgrade. When the runner approaches the server, you may trash Daruma. If you do, swap a card installed in this server with either another card installed in a server or with an agenda, asset, or upgrade from HQ. So that second part where you are swapping it with something from your hand, that counts as an install specifically because it is changing zones. So it is going from HQ into play in this server.
What's a zone, Nick?
One of them's the hand and the other one is the in play.
Yeah, so a zone is an area of the game where cards can exist.
Right.
And
every card is in one zone. So like the score area is technically a zone. You can still interact with cards in there. They often have text that is relevant.
Right. There's 8 zones in the game. There's deck, hand, discard pile, score area, play area, bank, set aside, and remove from the game. Those are the 8 zones that cards can exist in during the game. And if a card changes from one to the other, when it's swapped and it goes into the play area, it becomes installed.
Right. So this is installing a card with Daruma, so you can trigger Atea to get more installs on your opponent's turn. This isn't good per se, but the good one is Tatubola. So that's the new ice. It's a 2-cost, 1-strength barrier. And then when the opponent passes it, you can swap it with an ice in your hand to gain 4 credits. Because, again, it's changing zones from the board to your hand, and then something is coming from your hand to the board. It is an install, so you can trigger an install off the ID in the other server. So this is useful for getting things down that you don't want to leave exposed for an entire turn. They are now down at least 1 click, so now you can install, say, a
Moonpool
or a Rashida.
Yep.
With less risk that it's going to get run and taken out.
I mean, if it's last click,
fire. If
they're running last click and you have a Tatubola on the board and they're about to approach, if they pass it, then you're for free getting to put something down out of your hand it is their next turn. That's great.
Right. Yeah, and it can lead to a lot of stuff. I mean, just like Seamless is on for whatever card you just installed clicklessly during your opponent's turn. Seems good.
Yeah, it seems good.
So yeah, that was mine. It also works for ASA Group. So that one, I'm interested to find out how that does, because you don't get the discounts with that, but you can, pull back a Tatubola and throw down an ice and then throw down an upgrade, like say a Managarm, just out of nowhere.
I think Tatubola seems like a fantastic card.
It's so good. It's this huge econ engine for Jinteki, provided you have enough ice, but I totally underestimated how much money it can make you over the course of a game.
Gonna put it in my Isuak deck. It might solve all my problems. It's a low cost barrier and it generates money.
I'm sure that's
like the
one.
2 things that we're holding that deck back. So maybe it'll be better now. We'll see.
Yeah.
I have a quick thing, I guess, for spec work. Just wanted to mention Bypass and Capybara specifically with Anansi. Anansi is a nasty ice we've talked about several times in the podcast, but it has special text that is unique in the game. Whenever an encounter with this ice ends, if the runner did not fully break it, do 3 net damage. So let's say you have a way to de-res the card, so a Capybara on the board, which is maybe not the best example, but let's assume this is the case. A Capybara is a piece of hardware that we got to preview. It says, whenever you bypass a piece of ice, you may remove this hardware from the game to de-res that ice. So if you bypass with an inside job or whatever, if you bypass the Anansi, you can fire the Capybara and derez the Anansi. And then when the Anansi goes to check its text for doing that 3 net damage, if you didn't, the bypass normally you would still get hit with 3 net damage. It's face down. So it doesn't have any text and it therefore can't do any damage to you. So it works in your favor. And I wanted to highlight that.
Right. And the reason that works, to my understanding, is that the triggers happen in player order. So the active player's turn goes first.
Right.
So you as the runner have the first opportunity to trigger the Capybara and turn the Anansi face down. If your opponent had somehow said, like, okay, you're passing this Anansi, is there anything you want to do? You say no. They trigger the 3 net damage, and then you say, oh, I actually want to Capybara it. I mean, most people in this game are going to let you Capybara it and not take 3 net damage, but technically you missed your window.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so you could still do it and turn the Anansi face down, but it has already triggered, so that 3 net damage is going to happen.
Yep.
So anyway.
That's all we had for spec work, and we're going to dive straight into the depths. Tonight's topic for Into the Depths is the new meta. It's sort of just a continuation of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But we want to talk about the decks that we've been playing that are not Padma's new hobby.
That are winning games?
Yeah. There's some really interesting stuff out there. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so with the banning of Obokata, I decided that I wanted to try to do a more proactive version of Jinteki Personal Evolution, the famously grindery, really annoying deck that just has a million pings to it. So I decided that I was going to find a way to score the new 5/3
Fuji asset retrieval, I believe.
There you go. And also Neurospike someone on the same turn. It ends up being 6 damage, 2 from the agenda, 1 from the ID, and 3 from the Neurospike. So yeah, Neurospike, 3 cost operation, do X net damage, where X is equal to the sum of the printed agenda points on agendas you scored this turn. So the idea is get a Fuji on the board, get it advanced in some way, and then the next turn, you're all set up, and you can score the Fuji, play the Neurospike, and win the game, because your opponent has died.
So how are you scoring the Fuji?
Mostly with Seamless Launch, you've got it's mostly just Seamless Launch.
Seamless.
So you're hoping to have it on the board, and then you seamless it once or twice. You might have advanced it some the prior turn. You're also looking for different angles where you can get in a kill. So the deck does run some Blood in the Waters and Stings and things like that. There are ways that those can add up with a Neurospike to a kill and the ID. If the opponent isn't sitting on exactly 5 cards in hand, which they are going to be doing because you are playing PE, of course they're sitting on 5 cards in hand at all times.
Right. And is this deck running any of the new Enforcer from Wayland, Angelique Garza Carrera?
No, but it should be. The only reason it wasn't is because we actually brewed this deck entirely on the ride home from Philly.
Yeah.
And Angelique had not been revealed yet.
Right.
So we didn't know that Angelique was going to be coming, and that makes it a much more obvious include for something that you can throw down underneath the Fuji, and it will help protect it by dealing additional damage when they try to steal it.
Right. When the runner accesses this upgrade while it is rezzed, you may pay 2 credits to do 2 meat damage, which is like a price tech that does 2 meat damage instead of a meat damage in the tag.
Right. And there's also Daniela Jorge Ignacio, the new sysop from Jinteki, which is as an additional cost to trash the upgrade, the runner must add 2 cards from the grip at random to the bottom of the stack, and Persistent as an additional cost to steal an agenda from the server or its root. the runner must add 2 cards from the grip at random to the bottom of the stack. So either way, you're getting their hand down to 3 cards. If you put Daniela and the other piece that I've forgotten the name of in the last 3 seconds. Angelique, there we go. You put them both on the same server with a Fuji, and they can't steal without a 6 or more card hand. They just can't steal the Fuji. It just sits there. So that's one of the ways that you can defend your 5/3 on the board before you kill them with Neurospike.
Right. And then if they do that, then you can, if it's threat 3, you can reveal like another Angelique from hand, click in a credit, and do a meat damage and kill them. Or do blood in the water and pee them to death. Or some combination of thereof.
That's the basic idea.
Did you, we played this, right? You got to play this on this past Wednesday? Did you get to kill anybody?
I did. I killed James once, and he immediately said, okay, you're playing a different deck now. So that was basically my experience with it. I ran it a couple of times, and every time I felt like the deck was pulling me towards a grinder playstyle.
Yeah.
It felt very hard to set up the combo itself, especially without the upgrades to protect the card.
Right.
Once it was on the table. And I was very frequently looking for outs from things like Sting or Blood in the Water, things that would let me ping the opponent down and eventually wear them down. And that is exactly what I did not want to do with that deck. So,
right. You wanted to go for something more proactive.
Right.
Than just like, I grind you net damage to 3 net damage a turn.
Exactly. Yeah. More spiky didn't happen.
So what about your runner deck?
Yeah, it was another attempt at Mercury, this time a little more considered. So this is another one that we brewed up on the drive home. This was, I believe this was after we dropped off Derek. So Derek wasn't there to ruin all our fun ideas with his sense and
Derek in these interactions has always been the person going, yeah, this sounds, what you're doing now is making everything worse. Like you should just put in good cards and play the good cards. And we're like, no, but we want to do Airblades and Persephones.
Right. As soon as you start to describe like some really cool combo, he goes, yeah, wow, that's cool. That's a lot of cards to not do much though, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you take it out of the deck and you feel bad. But this deck, the whole idea was that A, we're going to play with Mercury, and B, we're going to play with Hermes. In the future standard event at East Coast Nats, I had run just the fastest possible version of Mercury that I could, just throw in all the bypass, run multiple times every turn, go before they put too much ice on the servers and lock you out. That did not work very well. So I decided that I was going to go with a more reserved Mercury. So almost all of the influence we ended up spending on Econ. And then there was a twinning with voice pad package to get our multi-access on top of Mercury's ability, and Bonhars to get through things without having to break any subroutines so that we could trigger the ID.
Did you end up on Banner too or not?
Yes. Yeah. So it was like 1 Banner, 1 Amina, 1 Carmen as the breaker suite.
Yeah.
I really do like Banner, but I feel like it needs a way to be more consistent. You really don't, on this deck, want to be wasting your runs, because the way that we had built it, it was very much something that was sitting back, building up a ton of money, a lot of cards in hand, a lot of resources, and then spending them sparingly on runs where you were relatively sure that you were going to hit something because you were spending counters off twinning, you were able to trigger the ID, that kind of thing. And face planting into a barrier that just stops you when you haven't seen your banner yet, or as happened to me in my first game, I lost the banner to a random net damage early on.
And like no recursion at all in that deck, right?
Nope, no recursion, just trusted to the heart of the cards, and it didn't pay off for
Game's
me.
over.
So, Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think my opponent ended up putting down like a tree line, and that was it.
Wow.
So It's an interesting deck. It's an interesting idea. It didn't really work out, but I did learn a lot about being more patient with the runner and how many resources you actually need. Instead of trying to build up to the point where I could get through that one server one more time to see one more card, even if I'm broke at the end of it, I'm now building up a lot further than that so that I am not broke and I still have some tempo, some oomph going into the next turn.
Right. Cool. Well, I put together a bunch of decks for that this past Wednesday. One of which was a deck that I published called On the Job from 9 to 5, which is a sports metal deck that is a variation on past Jeeves fast advanced sports decks that like were worlds winning. They were playing Jeeves at the time, and now I'm playing Wage Workers and like new cards like Greasing the Palm and a Bladif Barrier and things like that. But it's really crazy. I've never played sports with like this Jeeves ability, and getting to do like a 14 click turn is kind of crazy. I mean, it's called, not On the Job from 9 to 5 because you're like pretty easily like between 5 and 9 clicks is a standard turn for this deck. Or it's extremely easy to do.
When you only did like 5 clicks on a turn, it felt like, oh, that was just the shortest turn I've ever taken.
Right. Yeah. It's really hard. I actually I had to make a little like spreadsheet to try and figure out like what's the longest combo I could do, or what are the different things that could happen, and what does my turn look like when I have a Vitruvius counter versus what does it look like when I have 2 Vitruvius counters, and all the things that you can do. But it has 3 Wage Workers, which is a new asset. It's a Bioroid clone industrial asset, 2 to res, 4 to trash. Whenever you finish taking an action, if you have taken that action exactly 3 times, this turn gain a click. And it turns out that turns a bunch of craziness on where you can go, you can play 3 operations and gain a click. And like those 3 operations can all get you clicks back potentially if you're playing like a subliminal messaging, and then a red level clearance, which you can use to install a non-agenda card like say the Wage Workers onto the board, gain the click back, and then res the Wage Workers, and then play a Greasing the Palm, which is an operation which gains you money while installing an agenda you want to score onto the table, get a click back, and then you can start doing things like Biotic Labor and Audacities to score that agenda, maybe over Advance of Vitruvius, which will get you those cards back that you just played potentially, or an agenda that you pitched.
And you can always just triple advance the agenda that you just installed with Greasing the Palm and get an extra click back.
Right. Yeah, if you get an agenda on the table with operations and go advance, you can always put the 4th one down to get either the Vitruvius score or an off-world office or whatever. And and then luminal transubstantiation ends up getting you 3 more clicks, but then you're not scoring agendas. So
you're just setting up for the next turn.
Right.
Where you're going to be able to do this all over again.
Oh, and by the way, sports metal triggered and you got to like draw 2 more cards or gain more credits, or, yeah.
Yeah. You never run out of gas, and it just keeps going. So I'm honestly a little perplexed by Wage Workers. It is definitely different than Jeeves. The first time I read them, I thought they were the same. Jeeves Model Bioroids is a 2 to res, 5 to trash. Look at that difference. But it says the first time you spend 3 clicks on the same action each turn, gain 1 click. So that was limited to 1 trigger. It's also unique, so you couldn't have multiples of them up and triggering. The thing that I didn't realize when I first read that is it would apply to any 3 click action.
Yep.
That's where things can get really out of hand. So for instance, we were talking about Lady Liberty earlier. Lady Liberty would let you basically score a 3-1 from hand on the first turn it's rezzed, and Jeeves would also give you another action that you could do.
Right, or you can purge virus counters and then do an action.
Exactly.
With Jeeves, yeah. You can't do that with Wage Workers. But
right.
Also Jeeves was like,
interesting...
in a lot of the decks that it was imported to, it cost you no influence because of the alliance thing that was going on in that cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
that part's also a little silly, but it was interesting to see the two compared, because otherwise Wage Workers looks like a strictly better Jeeves because it can trigger multiple times a turn.
Right. So I claim no ownership over the deck. Really, that's like is very, very similar to a lot of the things that have been put out there before, but it is it's a lot of fun to play, and there wasn't a version with the new stuff, so I decided to publish it. And then actually, like on review, I think there's another person who published it maybe just before me with almost the exact same influence, like a 1 pivot, 2 Mavirus, and 2 Audacity.
Oh, wow.
But the difference is that I have like hyperloops, and they have the 2-1.
Elevagar bifurcation.
Yeah, because they want to just score those, but like whatever, you can just score a 3-1 like it's a 2-1 in this deck. So.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's the big realization with that deck is just no 3-1s are score from hand. It's easy.
Right. And hyperloops give you 3 credits back, so or 5. So.
Exactly.
And then the other deck that I published was called Ken and Debbie Wonder Twins. I named it, and it's a Ken Tenma deck that, like, the whole thing is that it's got 3 Debbie Downtown Moreiras in it, and that is a card that was made for Ken. So Ken, if you are unfamiliar, is a criminal ID that, 17 influence?
Yeah, did you not notice that?
I didn't realize that. Holy crap. Ken.
Oh, yeah.
My boy. The first time each turn you play a run event, gain 1 credit. So he wants to play a lot of run events. And to capitalize on that, there's 2 twinnings in the deck. There's 3 prepaid voice pads, which lets you, spend credits for the run events off of the prepaids, charge the twinnings. But then also Debbie Downtown Moreira says that whenever you play a run event, place 1 credit on this resource. And then you can click run any server. You spend hosted credits during that run. You can spend them. So that will also charge the twinnings. So there's lots of econ coming on the run events, and the twinnings getting charged fast. And not too much going on. There's like 2 Chesvas and 2 of each of Carmen, Kurapira, and Shibboleth, which is Kurapira and Shibboleth are 2 new breakers out of the Automata Initiative. And this deck is a lot of fun, and it did some stuff. It was putting in some work. So
yeah. No, the interesting thing to me is that I didn't realize that you had built it as a startup deck because I didn't see the whole list. I didn't realize it until after I'd played a couple of games with it. Like, it was going up against standard decks, obviously kind of unpolished, brand new meta standard decks, but still, just the power level of standard cards is so much higher, and it was doing fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to have one set of startup decks for if folks show up to our Wednesday nights and want to play startup. I want to have something legal to go up against them. So I still don't actually have a corp deck built for startup right now, but as my 5th deck, I was like, okay, I'll restrict myself to startup. And yeah, Ken doesn't really care. Ken is missing, what's the
diversion of funds?
Yeah, diversion of funds, which is it's a run event. And then what's the bravado? Bravado.
Oh yeah,
the deck would get better, right, if you go to standard, but it's still pretty damn good. It turns out that like Carpe Diem is great in Ken.
Yep.
And I don't know,
especially when voice pad is paying for it, so it's just a 0 money gain 4.
Right. And then maybe
so
run
good.
Also if you want. So
right. Yeah. If you happen to roll a server that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Gain money and run.
It seems good. I think that whatever. God, I've immediately forgotten the card. Bravado. If Bravado was in this deck instead of those, it would probably be fantastic, but who knows? I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too much risk. So that's what we've been playing. That's, I guess, probably all that we'll talk about. This episode's now going quite long. So anything that you want to mention here, Nick, before we wrap the episode?
No. I think this about covers it.
Well, that's a wrap for episode 10 of Neon Static. We've been your hosts, Eric
And I've been Nick.
If you want to get in touch with us about anything we've said during this podcast, we can be reached by email at neonstaticpod@gmail.com. Please reach out to us with feedback, with deck lists to feature on JankBank, or just anything you want to say to us. We would be happy to get some feedback. We're also Neon Static Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Our handles on Discord are Canister, Triforce Legend, and Gullbrander. A link to the New Hampshire Netrunners Discord will be in the show notes, which is where you can also always find us. Thanks for listening, and remember to run lots of nets and score lots of agendas. We never got to say goodbye. I wanted to say goodbye. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye.